Hello, thank you for taking the time today out of your schedule to participate. My name is Jared Schneider. I'm the project manager and an urban planner with Kimley Horn. We're a national planning and design firm working with the Hillsborough Planning Commission and Hillsborough County on this land use study. So what are we doing today? Today we wanted to provide an update on the RP-2 study and the comprehensive plan amendment. So we'll go over that first. And I know some of y'all have been involved from the beginning of last year, and some of you may be new, so we'll provide a little bit of the background of what we've been up to. And that gets us into the second item. Today we'll go through what we've heard in the past and really more focus on what we heard at the February public hearings. And then third, we'll provide an updated process and schedule of what we're doing through this year to update the RP2 land use category. And we've got some open exercises that we'll go through as well. And if you're not in person and not attending the meeting, we'll have this all online as well, so you can participate virtually as well. This slide gives you a recap of the purpose of the study. We're recommending changes to the policies and regulations in the RP2 area, and we'll give you a little bit more information on that coming up. And we're trying to develop a workable solution. There's obviously a lot of different thoughts and ideas, and trying to balance the rural character while also allowing development. And then infrastructure is a big item that's continually come up. So that's really what we're trying to balance with this study. The map on this slide shows the RP2 areas in Hillsborough County. And to give a little bit more background on the RP2 classification, it started well over 20 years ago, and it was a compromise to allow development in rural areas outside of the urban service boundary. The intent was for development to provide planned villages. And what that meant is you could have housing, but then you'd have a center that included retail, schools, and daily other uses that support daily life. And this is before there was any other development really out in this area. So they would be villages. And the context has changed recently with more development in the area, roads being expanded such as US 301 with commercial along them. And then also the pressure has increased over the last several years as more demand for housing has increased. So the balance is to allow housing, but do it in a way that fits the character of the area and also in providing efficient infrastructure and daily uses as well. So on this map, the RP2 areas are in the pink and the yellow. The pink is the Baum Village Plan area. The intent was to align more closely with the Baum Community Plan and the goals in that plan. To give a little bit more background, a moratorium was adopted in December 2019 for that southern area that we just showed, the Baum Village Plan area. And that was to allow for a pause in the process and revise the zoning category. So the study started in February 2020, and then came COVID, and the moratorium was extended to allow for kind of a change and really trying to understand how do we do public outreach. So last year we spent time developing the draft policies, and then we went to the Planning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners in February of this year to present those draft changes. And really, what we heard is a lot of discussion, robust discussion on compromise needed on some of the topics and more information, and really providing more opportunities to have in-person meetings. So that's kind of where we're at right now is just taking a step back, looking at what we have, and really having discussions like we are today and that we'll be having over the next several months. With this study, we're doing two things. We're updating the policies that we mentioned, and that's in the comprehensive plan amendment, and then we're updating the land development code. Those are the two areas where you have planned villages or RP2. And today we're focused on that comprehensive plan amendment. And what is the comprehensive plan? Several of y'all know, but those are policies, and they guide the future use of land and sets densities. It's broader. And then there's more of the manual, if you will, the land development code. And those are specific regulations that gets into even more details. But again, today we're talking specifically about the comprehensive plan amendment. There were three main things we were trying to do last year with the update to the policies. The first is to clarify the policies. There's a lot of additions that have made over time, so we're trying to clean that up and further emphasize infrastructure. We know that's a big concern in the area. Number two, we introduced community benefits, which was a way to allow additional density in the area, but you had to provide benefits to get up above the one dwelling unit per 5 acres for rural zoning, and then providing design standards as well that would maintain that rural character. And lastly, we hit on this already, but we identified two different areas, the North Village and the Baum Plan Village, and that was to further emphasize the Baum Community Plan. Now we're going to transition and talk more specifics about the policies that came about last year. And so this policy 33.2, the establishment of sub-planning areas, we touched on this already, that there's the North Village Plan area that we've identified in the Baum Village Plan area. And there's little nuances as far as requirements within those areas. So for example, the base density is more of an agricultural density. There's the one dwelling unit for 5 gross acres. And RP2 is, again, a compromise to be able to get up to 2 dwelling units per gross acre. So what we identified in that North Village Plan area is you had to have a parcel with 50 acres or greater, and to get up to a max of 2 dwelling units per gross acre, there's certain design rules that you had to follow, community benefits that you had to provide, and 40% of open space had to be provided as well. And you could get up to 4 dwelling units with a transfer of development rights. But again, there's kind of a parcel threshold you needed. If you were under that 50 acres, then you had to aggregate, and I'll explain that a little bit more. And in the Baum Village Plan area, moving to that right column, to get above the base density, you had to have a parcel with 160 acres or greater to get up to a max of 2 dwelling units per gross acre. And again, you needed to provide design standards or there's certain design rules you need to follow, community benefits, as well as the open space. And then you could also aggregate. And what do we mean by aggregation? That means adjacent parcels must have a property line or portions in common. There's vehicular and pedestrian access connected by internal roadways. So essentially needed to be adjacent to join into the area. And the reason why there's the differences between the North Village and the Baum Village, the North Village has, there's not as many properties left for development. So that's something that we heard time and time again last year. So this is really a big topic, and what we're trying to figure out is, and have more open discussions is what is that threshold? Is it under 50 acres for North Village? For Baum, is it under 160 acres? What is that? What is that sweet spot? So that's something definitely we want to continue to talk about and have a compromise. And so that's something at the in-person meeting that will be a specific question, as well as the online. There will be a specific question on that as well. So please feel free to give us your feedback on that. We talked about this already, but policy 33.7, community benefits and services, what that mentioned was really if developments wanted to develop over their base density, there's a list of community benefit options, which would provide improvements to the community. And those could include infrastructure, environmental, land, schools, commercial sites, residential support uses. There's a range of different options in there. And again, that was to go over the base density. Another policy addition was to address community connectivity. That was a big one that we heard about, connectivity and transportation. So there are several items under this policy. 33.7, which talked about developing a mobility master plan to lay out the streets and understand what the local connections could be. Gates were mentioned as only being permitted internal to the developments, again, to allow connectivity, and achieving Vision Zero goals or safer streets in the area was mentioned as well. Policy 33.11 deals with school sites. That was another big topic. So any developments 50 units or over, mentioned shall consult with the school district of Hillsborough County regarding identifying potential school sites. Policy 33.13 deals with agriculture and open space. There's a lot of discussion on open space, how much is too much, how much is too little. This was trying to allow some flexibility with open space. So it mentions up to 50% of open space requirements may be used for agricultural uses. We just went over some of the highlights of the changes to the policies, and now we're going to transition into number two of our agenda as a recap of what we heard last year. So from the commencement of the study in February 2020, over 90 meetings were held with different stakeholders, the public, staff, and elected officials. And those were board meetings that were open to the public. And really in March, we had our first meeting, March 2020, and that's shown in the lower left there, right before COVID really hit. So that was one of the last times we had an in-person meeting. We did try to do some physically distanced meetings on the right, as you can see. So this opportunity is to allow us to get back out there and into the community over the next several months. This slide shows a recap of what we heard in our first public meeting. And so what we did is we showed word clouds, and those were where we heard the same instances of the same word, the bigger the word shown on these screens. So on the left, we asked the question of, what do you think of the area today in BOM? And we heard traffic problems, poor infrastructure, congestion, rural, overcrowded. And so a number of themes there. And on the right, we talked about what's your vision for the area. So we heard things like rural, managed traffic, schools, less development, preserve nature. And then we did hear some themes on efficient infrastructure. Here we want to provide a recap of what we heard in the February public hearings. There's a number of contrasting viewpoints we're trying to balance here. So for example, some mention concerns about not enough density or impacts on property values, and that gets into some of the smaller property owners and concerns on those density thresholds of 50 or 160 acres. And others have concerns that there's too much density, and that stems with infrastructure issues. So there's a need for better infrastructure. There's already issues. So what happens if we add more homes? Some will say we already pay for infrastructure. Others don't pay enough for infrastructure. That's a big topic, obviously. And then others will talk about building what the market wants from home style. Others want half-acre lots. And this gets into kind of the clustering. So cluster for efficient development, no clustering. Some feel that obviously clustering, you're packing in homes tighter, and then that allows for kind of a centralized water, stormwater facility versus no clustering. You may have septic tanks. So this gets into kind of the look and the feel, especially from the home styles. And so that's where others want to keep it rural feeling, and then there's some that feel there's too much open space required. So there's a balance in a lot of these topics, and we'll get into a little bit more detail next. One of the main topics that came up in February was the wetland density credit. And for the most part, for the public comments that were received, the wetland density credit removal was not supported. Another item was the outreach to kind of continue extending the moratorium, allow time to discuss the proposed policies. This is a summary of some of the other specific comments heard in February. Infrastructure again came up, concerns on transportation. There's already deficiencies in transportation, so there's concerns of allowing additional housing and what that's going to do to the transportation network. Schools are needed, fire, stormwater, libraries are all needed in the area. So how do we achieve that with additional development? And then the community benefits, some of the things that we heard, it's too expensive, not enough benefit for the expense, and doing analysis of what the benefits are. So that's something I see as a continued discussion over the next few months. Open space, how much is enough? How much is too much? It was mentioned 40% takes more land than existing regs. Some like it, they want to maintain the rural character. And then some will talk about open space as being public versus private. So there's a range of discussions that we'll be getting into over the next few months on that. And then the acreage limits, we talked about the BOM Village plan area having 160 acres. there was discussion of not many 160-acre sites are left, so it's complicated for the smaller property owners. So again, I want to hear more and talk more about that. Other comments we've heard were light pollution on development. So again, having the right rural character with new development. Now we want to transition and talk a little bit more about the updated process where we're going over the next few months on the schedule and getting your feedback. Here we're talking about, where do we go from here? And today is really just to recap where we've been and provide an update. But where we're moving over the next few months is talking about how do we come up with a workable solution? How do we come up with a workable RP2 that strikes the right balance? So we'll be updating the policies and regulations from what we've just shown. And there's going to be multiple opportunities to participate. There's 2 public meetings, the one we're talking about tonight, as well as an online component if you couldn't make it. There's going to be another public meeting coming up, and I'll go through the schedule here in a minute, an open house. And then we're also going to have focus meetings coming up in the month of April and May, where we're going to dive in deeper into the comprehensive plan policies and get into the weeds of the land development code, the real specifics of the neighborhood design, open space, what's the right amount, very specific type questions. So if you're interested in those conversations, those focused stakeholder meetings, please let us know. You can contact staff on that. And so yeah, that's kind of a high level of where we're going. Again, trying to come up with a workable solution. This is a preliminary scheduled. As you know, today we're at public meeting number 1, which is to provide an update on the comprehensive plan. And April, May, we'll have those focus meetings. We'll get into the details, like I was mentioning. And then in May, if you couldn't make it to the focus meetings, we'll roll up what we heard tonight, as well as what we talked about in the April, May meetings, which those will be recorded as well. But we'll roll it up into kind of the public meeting number 2, where we'll talk about the community benefits, neighborhood design, and then there'll be another opportunity in June for an open house to review updates where we're at. And again, this is subject to change, but May, June, we have board meetings. August and October, we've got the BOCC, the public hearing. So there's a lot of opportunities to participate as well as online. So, and then we're headed towards December 31st is when the moratorium ends. So I'm going to get everything wrapped up well in advance of that. And yeah, again, feel free to go to the website for any more additional information. I want to thank you again for your time today. And if you have any questions at all, please go to the website. Please participate in the exercises. Again, the website will have more information on upcoming events and activities. So please look to that. And then also, if we've got your contact information, you'll be hearing more from staff. So thank you again. Have a good rest of your day.